Hey guys, how's it going? It's Alex of Coyote Star Astrology, and this is my full moon in Taurus video for November 12th, 2019. And we're also going to be talking about 11/11, the day just before the full moon, because the energies that we see come through the 11/11 portal have a lot to do with what the full moon in Taurus on the 12th is illuminating. So let's pull up the chart for 11/11. I'm on Pacific Standard Time here in LA, where I'm filming, and during the 11/11 portal, we see that we have the Sun and Mercury both at 18 degrees Scorpio. So they're conjunct there at 18 degrees, and if I click the time forward 1 hour, boom, you can see that Mercury went from one side of the Sun to the other. So this in astrology is known as the Sun combust Mercury, where the Sun and Mercury cross each other's paths in the sky, they shake hands, and then they go their separate ways. The moment that Mercury and the Sun cross one another, the light of the Sun is so bright and brilliant that it cancels out Mercury. And for a brief moment, we can't see Mercury in the sky. And symbolically, this is when the rays of the Sun illuminate Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. Mercury has been retrograde since end of October, October 31st. It will go direct on November 20th. And this Mercury-Sun combustion moment on 11/11 in many ways marks the approximate middle point of this transit, as well as the climax or the crux, the illumination of something involving this process for you. Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, I've got a whole video on it before this video, but just to recap, Mercury retrograde in Scorpio has a lot to do with our subconscious coming out of the depths into the light to be transformed. So it drags the shadows out of the cave, the things that we would rather not look at to some degree, and exposes them so that we can examine them and hopefully transform them, get rid of whatever is vibrationally not in alignment with where we're trying to go. And this Mercury retrograde in Scorpio has been extra intense because we're getting closer and closer to 2020. We're all going through this massive shift, and there's certain things vibrationally that we know aren't supposed to come with us. So this fall is really kind of this last purge before we get there. And on 11/11, we have this little window or this portal where we can kind of get this aha moment of what exactly this whole thing is about. Scorpio does deal with patterns and cycles. And so if you feel like you're seeing within yourself something come up that you've been dealing with for a while or in the past, this is really a moment where we can get a clear view of it from the Sun's light, and then moving into the early hours of November 12th. I'm going to click the chart forward to November 12th. Then we come into our full moon in Taurus, where we can decide what to do about them. So here we are, Pacific Standard Time, we're looking at about 5:30 a.m. on November 12th. And you can see that we have the moon in Taurus at 19 degrees and the Sun in Scorpio at 19 degrees. So there's our full moon. And the Sun is still conjunct Mercury. Mercury is at 17 Scorpio. So whatever was brought up on 11/11 now has the moon in Taurus shining its light, bouncing this light back and forth between the Sun and the moon. And this is what's really being illuminated. And when we're talking about Taurus, we're talking about our values, our ideas of right and wrong, what we allow into our field, what we don't, our likes and dislikes, our tastes. And Taurus likes things to be of quality. Taurus is the bull. It has very stubborn, very rigid ideas of what it likes and what it dislikes. The Taurus archetype, if Taurus goes to a restaurant and they don't have the dish that they went there for, they'll often leave. They're not going to settle for something less. It's, I like this, I don't like this, and there's a very strong held conviction about this standard. So Taurus brings to our awareness this idea of values and boundaries, and then has the staying power to stick to them to some degree stubbornly. That would be, in some ways, the shadow of Taurus, is that Taurus has a hard time deviating away from these systems. But when in balance, Taurus shows us this beautiful staying power to rigidly stay within the lanes of what we deem worthy of our divine attention and what we do not. Taurus is about self-love. It's about setting oneself up in life to be self-sustainable, to be comfortable, and to be luxurious. Taurus wants to be comfortable. It wants the best of the best and nothing less. And when the moon is in Taurus, the emotional security can be linked to how one is set up in life from a material standpoint. There's an undeniable, huge relationship between Scorpio and Taurus with finances. So this can be a time where we are looking around at our life and deciding if we are where we want to be. And if we're not, and if this Sun conjunct Mercury in Scorpio is bringing to light things that we would like to change, the moon in Taurus can provide us with this very grounded platform to realize and take responsibility for the fact that our choices, our values, and the things that we have been allowing ultimately reflect what we're now potentially confronting. The moon in Taurus is making some beautiful aspects to Pluto and Saturn. So this is about the long term, and this is about things that we're trying to build. Taurus is one of the carpenters of the zodiac. Taurus wants something sturdy and quality that it can depend on. It wants to know that its basic needs are being met. It wants to feel safe and secure in the world. It wants to have a good roof over its head. It wants opulent, luxurious food and living spaces and financial abundance. It wants money in the bank. It wants a reliable partner. It wants things to be sturdy. Taurus is kind of a no-nonsense sign. So what the lesson of this moon is really bringing in for me is that, again, taking responsibility for the fact that our values reflect our vibe and that our inner world, Mercury and Scorpio, reflects our outer world. And this full moon and 11/11 particularly is a chance to really see clearly all of the things that maybe we don't want to look at, and then how those things are lining up potentially with our future or how they're not. And then decide, are there some shifts in values? Are there some shifts in my standards that need to take place? Because our values reflect what we eat, who we hang out with, who we fall in love with, why we fall in love with the people that we fall in love with, how we treat ourselves. It's our standards for living. So if we're looking around at our life and we feel like we're existing within the cheaper version of what we actually want, Taurus does not stand for that. Taurus is not into cheap, it's into quality. And just to bring in the financial thing again, often the amount of money that we make reflects the amount of self-love that we have. Because if we don't consider ourselves valuable, we're not going to set the standards we need to set to ensure that our needs are being met in exactly the way that we want and need them to be. So with the light of the sun shining on the deepest caverns of our mind there with Mercury and Scorpio, We can come from this very practical and grounded place about how to eradicate some of these shadow elements by simply shifting our divine attention, creating those boundaries, and calling in more wealth and abundance and self-love in so many different areas of our life. We really want to look at what Venus is doing because she's the ruler of Taurus and she's there in Sagittarius where she wants the best life. She wants adventure. She wants nothing to do with the shadows in Sagittarius because she just came out of Scorpio. Sag follows Scorpio. So with Venus in Sag, she's ready to get positive. She's ready to expand herself spiritually, shoot that arrow up into the cosmos. She wants life to be fun. But then we see that she's being squared by Neptune, the planet of illusion and fantasy. So the vibration of this aspect in the chart suggests that we have these big visions right now. Since Venus went into Sag recently, we might have felt very uplifted by the idea of what is potentially possible, but this square from Neptune is like, there's something about reality that's not entirely true or lining up yet, or maybe it's just that it's not entirely clear how it's all going to pan out. But what this whole Mercury retrograde in Scorpio thing is about, and it has such, Mercury retrograde has such a bad reputation, but what retrogrades are really all about, especially when in Scorpio, is about getting rid of the things that are in the way of achieving all of that positivity. And this is a shedding process. And think of a snake shedding that old skin. It's itchy, it's uncomfortable. So for some people, this is an uncomfortable process, but sometimes we need to get really uncomfortable with something in order for it to get our attention long enough to focus on that area and finally shift it. Sometimes it needs to get nearly unbearable before we're actually ready to do that. Up until that point, it's not priority. But this retrograde is having us make priority of the things that are of a really low vibe, of a really low vibration. And with the moon in Taurus, it's like, can I build on this? Is it secure? Is it stable? And looking at the shadows that have come up and those not so attractive, beautiful aspects of ourselves. Taurus is about beauty. And the Taurus moon over there is looking over at the sun and Mercury in Scorpio, which is kind of like this little creepy, crawly shadow area of the chart. And yeah, it's probably going to illuminate some things that do kind of give us the creeps or do make us a little bit uncomfortable. But most of it has to do with our own mind and the way that we've been thinking about things and the way that those thoughts have resulted in reality and how we can then shift those thoughts to a higher vibration and then watch how our external reality begins to reflect the shifting of those values. So there's a lot of manifestation alchemy in this chart, particularly around financial abundance. By harnessing that beautiful quality that the Taurus archetype has to really give itself the best of the best. I'm actually filming this video in the home of my best friend who happens to have her Venus in Taurus. Love you, Daniela. Anyway, I wish I could show you guys. She would kill me. But her house is so freaking beautiful because her Venus is in Taurus and she's attracted aesthetically to beautiful things. She's got fresh cut flowers out. She's got her little shrine with Lakshmi and all of these beautiful little things everywhere. Very feminine, lots of different essential oils, things that delight the senses and make one feel like they are surrounded by royalty. That is the essence of Taurus. And with this full moon in Taurus in opposition to that shadow self, it's such a beautiful polarity point of like, wow, okay, I have some work to do, but now that I see it clearly like that, I know just what to do. I know just what values I need to shift to bring in the life of my dreams. And I'm not going to settle for less. I'm not going to settle for the cheap version of my life. I think that there's a lot of potential in this one to make some huge, huge moves. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you would like to reach out to me for a reading, you're more than welcome to do so. I will put my website right here, and I will also put it down in the description box. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and a share. I really appreciate it. All right, you guys, I will see you next week.